picture a house so tall that a girl carrying 2 full coal scuttles from the cellar to the top floor climbs the height of a church steeple before breakfast. Now fill it with people who are not allowed to be seen. Add a front door painted so glossy black that you can see the street in it. A brass knocker polished every morning with a rag and a paste that eats the skin off your knuckles, and a drawing room upstairs where, on certain afternoons, the fattest and most famous man in the British Empire sits down to tea with somebody else's wife. That's 30 Portman Square, London, in the last winter of the 19th century. Marble mantelpieces above, a kitchen below the pavement where the sun never reaches, a place where a duke's carriage could roll up in the morning and a rat could roll out of the coal hole by evening. We're going back there tonight. Not as guests coming up the front steps. We're going in the other way, down the area steps, through the door under the pavement, into the part of the house that was built to be invisible. One girl, one long day, and then the years that grew out of it. Everything she would have seen, smelled, carried, scrubbed, and survived. And I'll tell you now, because it's the reason we're here. The baby born in that house in the spring of 1900 is the grandmother of the woman who was crowned Queen of England in 2023. The mistress of King Edward VII is the great-grandmother of Queen Camilla. The bloodline runs straight down through that drawing room, and it passed, at one point, through the hands of a 17-year-old housemaid holding a basin of hot water. So, I make these stories, and I still don't know whether you're asleep by the 4th paragraph or lying there wide awake thinking about coal dust and adultery. Either way, subscribe if you like. Get comfortable. Here we go. You're on your knees on the front steps and your hands are the wrong colour. That's the first thing. Before anything else this morning, before the day is even decided to be a day, you notice that your hands have gone a dead greyish white from the hearthstone, the block of chalky stuff you rub on the steps to make them the same pale cream as every other front step on Portman Square. The stone is wet. The water in the bucket beside you has a skin of ice on it that you broke with your knuckle 10 minutes ago, and every time you press the block down and drag it across the step, a fine, gritty, cold slurry runs back under your fingernails. It's 20 minutes to 6 on the morning of Tuesday, the 14th of November, 1899. You've been in this house for 8 weeks and 3 days, and Mrs. Draycott, the housekeeper, has just told you that you will not exist this afternoon. She said it exactly like that. She came up out of the area, the sunken well in front of the house where the servants' door is, with her keys hanging at her waist and her breath steaming, and she stood on the pavement above you so that you had to look up at her from your knees, and she said, "He is coming at 4:30. From 4:30 until he leaves, you will not exist. You will be on the top landing, or you will be in the cellar, and you will not be anywhere between. Do you understand me?" You said yes, Mrs. Draycott. You didn't ask who he was. You've been here 8 weeks. You know who he is. Everybody in the house knows who he is, and nobody says the name. Not below stairs, not above, not ever, because that's the first rule, the one they teach you before they teach you where the dustpans are. Nobody says who comes to tea. The block of hearthstone squeaks. Your knees, through the sacking apron you kneel on, have gone from cold to numb to something past numb that will hurt later when the blood comes back. Your name is Ellen Hartley. Everyone calls you Nell. You're 17 years old. You're the under housemaid, the lowest female servant in a household of 11. And you came to London from a village on the North Norfolk coast 8 weeks ago with a tin box, 2 aprons your mother sewed, a character reference from the rector, and a pair of boots that were already too small. Back home, everyone said London would swallow you whole. They weren't wrong. It's just that nobody told you how quietly it does it. You finish the third step. There are 5. Then the boot scraper, then the brass, then the area railings if there's time, and there won't be. The street is still dark. Portman Square is a great rectangle of tall brick houses around a locked private garden, and at this hour it belongs to people like you. 2 doors down, another girl is on her knees with her own bucket, and you can hear her block squeaking in time with yours. You've never spoken to her. You've nodded once. Across the square, a lamplighter is walking the railings with his long pole, turning off the gas lamps one after another, each one dying with a small blue pop, so that the darkness you're working in is actually getting darker as the sky gets lighter. A milk cart clatters past. Iron wheel rims on the granite sets, the sound going right up through your kneecaps. The horse blows steam. Somewhere toward Oxford Street, a church bell strikes the 3/4, and you flinch, because that means you're behind. You're always behind. That's not a complaint. That's the shape of the job. 4th step. 5th. You stand up and your knees crack, and for a second the square swings around you because you've been bent double for 20 minutes with your head lower than your heart. You pick up the bucket. The wire handle bites into the groove it has already worn across your palm. You go down the area steps, 12 of them, iron, each one with a lip of frost, to the door under the pavement. That's the door you use. The front door, the glossy black one, is for people who exist. The kitchen passage smells of last night's cabbage water and this morning's blacklead. That second smell is going to be on your hands for the rest of the day, no matter what you do. A smell like pencil and cold iron. Because after the steps come the grates. 7 fireplaces on the first 3 floors, each one to be raked out, the ash carried down in a bucket held away from your body, so it doesn't grey your apron, the bars and the hearth painted with blacklead from a tin, and then polished with a hard brush until they shine like wet slate. Then the fires laid, then the fires lit, then the coal carried up to fill the scuttles by every hearth, so that no one who exists ever has to see coal arrive. The scuttles are the killer. You know that already. 8 weeks in. A full scuttle of best Wallsend weighs about as much as a 2-year-old child, and the drawing room is on the 1st floor, and the bedrooms are on the 2nd, and the nursery is on the 3rd, and the stairs at the back of the house, the servants' stairs, are steep and narrow and lit by one gas jet at each turn, and you climb them on an ordinary day with the scuttle in each hand something like 40 times. Somebody told you the back stairs of this house have 74 steps from cellar to attic. You've never counted. You've never had a free enough mind going up them to count. So that's the morning. Steps, grates, coal, water cans for the washstands, slops from the bedrooms carried down in a covered pail with your eyes fixed on the rim, breakfast trays, the nursery, the housemaid's cupboard with its smell of beeswax and turpentine, and the whole of it done before the family's awake, so that when they come down they find fires burning and floors gleaming and no sign at all of how it happened. That's what you are in this house. You're how it happened. And today, at 4:30, you're not going to be even that. Ivy is at the kitchen table when you come in, cutting bread for the servants' breakfast. Ivy is the other housemaid, the upper one 19 from Bermondsey, sharp as a tack and thin as a rake, and she looks at your hands and says, "Hearthstone's got you again. Lard, tonight. I've got some." Draycott says I'm not to exist this afternoon. Ivy doesn't look up from the bread. Nobody exists this afternoon. Not you, not me, not Frank, not the cat. Only Rolf, and he barely counts. She wipes the knife on her apron. You get the coal up to the drawing room by 3. Both scuttles, full, and the fire built up so it'll last till 6 without touching. Then you go up top and you stay there and you mend stockings and you don't come down till Mrs. D rings twice. What if the fire goes out? Ivy does look up then. Then it goes out, and Rolf sees to it. And you're the girl whose fire went out. And you don't want to be that girl. She pushes a heel of bread across the table to you. Eat that standing. You've the greats to do. You eat it standing. That's how you eat mostly. Standing or walking or with a tray on your knee on the back stairs. You haven't sat down at a table with a plate in front of you since you left Norfolk, except for the servants' dinner at 1 o'clock, which lasts 12 minutes if you're lucky. The bread is good, at least. This is a rich house, and the bread is good, and there's enough of it. That's not nothing. The first grate is the dining room. You go up the back stairs with the housemaid's box, the wooden tray with a handle that holds the black lead, the brushes, the cloths, the kneeling mat, and it bangs against your hip on every step. The dining room is dark. You light one gas bracket, low, and the room comes up out of the black. A long table under a green baize cover, a sideboard like a tomb. Portraits of somebody's ancestors looking down with the expression that all painted ancestors have, as if they can smell you. Kneel. Rake. The ash is still faintly warm underneath, and it rises in a soft grey breath when you disturb it, and you turn your face away and it settles on your hair anyway. Into the bucket. The bucket goes by the door, on a square of newspaper, because if you leave a ring of ash on the turkey carpet, Mrs. Draycott will find it, and Mrs. Draycott finds everything. Black lead. You tip a little from the tin onto a saucer, wet the brush, work it into the bars. It's cold and slick and it gets into the creases of your fingers, and when you polish it up with a dry brush, your arms burn from the elbow down and your breath comes short. Faster. The bars go from dull to black to a hard, deep shine, and you sit back on your heels for 1 second and look at it. Because it's good. It's properly good, and nobody will ever look at it but you. Then paper, then kindling, then 3 lumps of coal placed with your fingers so the air can get underneath. Then the match. The paper catches with a sound like a whisper. The kindling snaps, and you kneel there a moment longer than you need to with your hands out toward it, because your hands are not going to be warm again until tonight. 6 more. By the time you reach the drawing room, the sky in the tall windows has turned the colour of dirty milk. This is the room. You know it's the room. It's on the first floor at the front of the house, and it runs the whole width. 3 great windows onto the square, and it's done in a way that you had no words for when you first saw it, and still don't really. Pale walls. A carpet so thick your boots sink into it. Little tables everywhere covered in things. Silver frames, china figures, a bowl of hothouse roses in November that cost, Ivy told you, more than you earn in a month. 2 sofas, deep and soft, and 1 chair. The chair is by the fire on the right-hand side. It's bigger than the others, an armchair in dark red leather, and it has a footstool, and there is a small table beside it at exactly the height of a resting hand, and on the table there's a heavy glass ashtray and a silver box. Nobody sits in that chair. You've dusted it every morning for 8 weeks, and you have never once seen anyone in it. Not Mr. Keppel, not Mrs. Keppel, not a guest. When the cat got into the drawing room in your 2nd week and jumped up on it, Mr. Rolf the butler lifted the cat off with both hands, as if it were a live coal, and carried it out and did not speak to anyone for an hour. You do the grate. You do it better than the dining room. You do it, if you're honest, better than you've done anything since you came to London, because you're frightened, and fright makes your hands careful. When the fire is built, you don't light it yet, that's for later, and you stand up and turn around. Mrs. Keppel is standing in the doorway. You didn't hear her. Nobody hears her. She's in a wrapper, a long loose gown in some pale blue stuff with her hair down her back in a thick brown plait. And she is, at this hour, without the corsets and the hat and the 100 things that turn a woman into a lady. Just a very tall, very handsome woman of 30, with a broad, calm face, who is looking at her own fireplace. You drop a curtsy so fast you nearly go over. Good morning, Nell. She knows your name. She learned it on your second day, and she has used it every time she has spoken to you since, which is about 6 times, and every one of those 6 times you've felt something in your chest turn over, because Mrs. Draycott calls you Hartley, and Mr. Rolfe calls you girl, and Mr. Keppel has never called you anything because he has never, as far as you can tell, noticed you at all. Good morning, madam. That's a fine grate. She comes into the room, her bare feet silent on the carpet, and looks down at the fire you've built. Mrs. Draycott has told you about this afternoon. Yes, madam. Good. She stands for a moment with her hand on the back of the red chair, not sitting, just resting it there. Her eyes have a way of being amused without her mouth doing anything. It's a great deal of nonsense, most of it. But it's the kind of nonsense we have to be very good at. You understand? Yes, madam, you don't understand, not really. But you understand that she's not angry, and that's enough to be going on with. Violet has a cold, she says. Would you ask Nanny to keep her in the nursery this afternoon? I'll come up myself before 4. She smiles, and it changes her whole face, and then she's gone, back through the door, and you stand there in the drawing room holding your housemaid's box with your heart going like a hammer. That's the second rule, the one nobody teaches you. You're not supposed to like them. You go down for the coal. The coal cellar is under the pavement at the front of the house. You get to it through a low door off the kitchen passage, and then you're in a black space that smells of wet stone and sulphur and something older than either. And above your head there's the round iron plate set into the pavement, the coal hole, where the coalman tips his sack straight down from the street. When he comes, twice a week, the whole cellar fills with a roaring and a dust that you can taste for an hour afterward. And for a few minutes the light comes down through the open hole in a grey column, and you can see the coal glittering, and then the plate goes back and you're in the dark again with a candle. You fill the scuttles with a short shovel. The coal is hard and cold, and it clanks. A full scuttle, when you lift it, pulls your shoulder down in the socket, and you've learned to lift with the knees and to keep your back straight and to carry one in each hand so that they balance you. Because Ivy showed you, the first week, the bruise across the small of her back from the year she carried them one at a time, up, the kitchen passage, the green baize door. That's the door that separates the 2 houses. Everyone in service calls it that. The green baize door, because that's what it is. A door padded and covered in thick green cloth, and it swings shut behind you without a sound, and on this side of it there are stone floors and gas jets and the smell of blacklead, and on the other side there are carpets and roses and quiet. You push it with your shoulder because your hands are full. The back stairs, 74 of them. The scuttles knock against your knees at every 3rd step because you can't hold them out wide enough. At the first turn the gas jet hisses and throws your shadow ahead of you up the wall, huge and lumpy. Your breath goes ragged at the 2nd floor. Your fingers, inside the wire handles, have gone past pain into a kind of hot buzzing, and you tell yourself what you always tell yourself, which is, this is the last one, and it's never the last one. Drawing room. Set them down on the tin trays either side of the hearth. Straighten the fender. Check that not one speck of dust has fallen on the red chair. Then down again, then up again with the cans. The cans are the hot water for the washstands. Brass with a lid and a spout, one for each bedroom, filled from the copper in the scullery where the water is kept hot all day, and they have to go up before 8, and they have to go up hot, so you run the stairs with a brass can in each hand, and the metal handles burning through the cloth you've wrapped around them, and the water sloshes and you feel it slap against the inside of the can with every step. Mrs. Keppel's room. You knock, you wait for nothing, you go in. You pour the water into the flowered basin on the washstand and it steams up the mirror. She's not there. She's in her dressing room with Miss Draper, her lady's maid, and you can hear them talking through the door. Miss Draper's Scottish voice, low and quick. You take the slop pail from under the washstand, cover it, carry it out with your eyes on the rim. Mr. Keppel's room, across the landing. Empty. His bed slept in, one side only. A pair of enormous boots by the chair. Mr. Keppel is 6 feet 4 inches tall, with a moustache like a cavalry officer's, and the most beautiful manners in London, according to Ivy, and he is, according to Cook, who says it with her mouth turned down, a very obliging husband. You didn't understand that either the first week. You understand it now. The nursery is on the 3rd floor and the nursery is another country. It has its own fire, its own rules, its own ruler, who is Nanny, a square woman from Kent called Mrs. Ambrose, who is called Nanny by everyone from the butler to the child, and who has, you suspect, more actual power in this house than Mrs. Draycott, because Nanny answers to Mrs. Keppel alone and Mrs. Keppel adores her. Violet is 5. Violet is sitting up in her little bed with a red nose and a doll, and when you come in with the can, she says, "Nell, I'm not to go downstairs today," Mamma says, "because of the visitor." And Nanny says, "That's enough, Miss Violet," in a voice like a lid going on a pot. Mrs. Keppel says she'll come up before 4, Nanny. I know what Mrs. Keppel says, thank you, Hartley. You pour the water. Violet watches you over the doll's head. She has her mother's eyes, that same look of being privately amused, and she says, in a whisper that carries clear across the room, "Is it Kingy?" Nanny's head comes round like a gun. Miss Violet. Bed. Now. And Hartley, you may go. You go. You go down the stairs faster than the cans need you to, with your face burning, and the word follows you all the way to the kitchen. Kingy. You didn't know children knew. You didn't know children had a word for it. You thought it was a thing that lived in the drawing room and the servants' hall and nowhere else, and it turns out it lives in the nursery too, in a 5-year-old's mouth as a pet name. Servants' breakfast is at 8:30 in the servants' hall, which is a long low room in the basement with a scrub table and a window that looks out at the wall of the area, so that what you see when you look up from your plate is bricks, and boots going past above, and the underside of the pavement. 11 of you when everyone's in, though Mr. Rolfe and Mrs. Draycott and Miss Draper take theirs in the housekeeper's room and don't sit with the rest. So it's 8. Cook, who is Mrs. Wright and is not Mrs. Anything, it's a title. Her kitchen maid, Polly, 14 and always crying about something. The scullery maid, whose name is Ada, and who you have heard speak perhaps 20 words in 8 weeks. Frank the footman and Albert the second footman, both of them 6 feet tall, because footmen are hired by the inch and matched like carriage horses. Ivy, you, and Mr. Keppel's valet, Dawes, who considers himself above the footman and sits at the end with a newspaper. Porridge, bread, tea so strong it's nearly brown. You eat with your head down, and the talk goes over you. 4:30, Frank says. Rolf's had me take the Havanas out of the humidor and lay them in the silver box. 12. He'll smoke 3. He'll eat the lot of the sandwiches is what he'll do, Cook says. I've the lobster in, and the foie gras coming at noon, and Mrs. K wants the little cakes with the pink on, and there's to be the cold chicken in case. 1 man. Not 1 man, Frank says. 1 appetite. Dawes rustles his newspaper. That's enough. It's only the hall, Mr. Dawes. It's a house with windows. That stops it. That's the thing about this house. It can be joked about. Below stairs, up to a certain line, and then somebody says something like that. A house with windows, and everyone looks at their porridge. Polly leans across to you. Have you seen him? Ever? No. I saw him once from the area. He's ever so big, and his voice. You can hear him laugh right down through the floor. She looks around and drops her voice. Ivy says he gives the footmen a sovereign at Christmas. Ivy says a lot of things, Ivy says without looking up. After breakfast, the real day begins, the part that would be the same in any house in the square. Whoever was coming to tea. Bedrooms. Beds stripped, aired, made. The sheets pulled so tight you could bounce a coin. Carpets swept on your knees with a hand brush and tea leaves. Damp tea leaves scattered first to hold the dust down, then brushed up. The leaves and the dust together into the pan. Dusting every surface, every china shepherdess and silver frame and glass drop on the chandelier, and there are 300 glass drops on the drawing-room chandelier, Ivy counted once. Stairs. The front stairs, the grand ones, are Ivy's, because the front stairs are where the family walks, and the family must never see the under-housemaid. The back stairs are yours, all 74 of them, on your knees, with a bucket. At 11 o'clock you're on the second floor landing, halfway down, with your bucket of water gone grey and your hands red to the wrist. When the front doorbell rings, you freeze. It's not him. It can't be him. It's 11:30 in the morning. But your whole body goes still anyway, the way a rabbit's does, and you stay there with the scrubbing brush dripping onto the step until you hear Frank's voice in the hall, and a woman's laugh, and the drawing-room door, and then you breathe. A caller. Mrs. Keppel has callers all morning, every morning, because Mrs. Keppel is, and you're only now beginning to understand the size of this, one of the most sought-after women in London. Not because of the tea at 4:30, or not only, because of what she is. Because she is clever and kind and never says a cruel thing about anyone and remembers everybody's children's names, and because she's beautiful in a way that isn't about being pretty. Ivy says the front stairs on a Tuesday are like a railway platform. You go back to scrubbing. There's a rhythm to it if you let there be. Dip, ring, scrub, a small circle, the brush bristles scratching the stone with a dry, busy sound. Cloth, wipe, move down 1 step, drag the bucket with you. Feel the cold ring of water it leaves on the step above soak through your apron into your knee. Dip, ring. Your shoulders ache in a band across the top. Your neck aches from looking down, and the skin on your knuckles has split in 2 places, thin red lines that sting every time they go in the water. You think about home sometimes when you scrub. That's the danger of the rhythm. You think about the marshes at Clay, and the sound the wind makes in the reeds, and your mother at the table with the lamp, and then the split in your knuckle catches on the bristles, and you're back on the stairs. Servant's dinner is at 1. Boiled mutton, potatoes, cabbage. It's good and there's plenty and you eat it fast because cook is already banging pans for the tea, and the kitchen, when you carry a plate through, is like something out of a Bible picture. The great range roaring, the heat coming off it in a wall, cook with her sleeves up and her arms red. Polly weeping over onions in a corner, and on the long table the sandwiches going together under a damp cloth. Lobster on brown, cucumber on white, the crust cut off with a knife that cook honed for a full minute before she'd touch the bread. Out of my kitchen, cook says, unless you've come to be useful. You've come to be useful. You wash for half an hour at the scullery sink with Ada, side by side in silence. Plates and pans, the water so hot it turns your hands the colour of ham, and then Ivy puts her head round the door and says, "Coal, now," and then up. You go down to the cellar, 2 scuttles, the heaviest you've filled, up the stairs with them, your arms shaking, the green baize door bumping shut behind you like a hand on your back. The drawing room, it's ready. You didn't see it done. That's how it's supposed to be. Somebody, Ivy, Mr. Rolfe, has been through it since the caller left, and now the roses have been changed for fresh ones, and the little tables have been cleared of everything but the ashtray and the silver box, and a photograph in a frame that you have never seen before, and don't look at too closely. The fire you built at 7 this morning is lit now and burning low, and you kneel and bank it up the way Ivy showed you, coal on coal, close packed, so it'll glow for 2 hours without being touched. You set the scuttles down, you straighten the fender, you stand. The red chair is there, the footstool is there, the room smells of roses and beeswax and, very faintly, already from the silver box of cigars. You're about to go when you hear the front door bell. It's 4:20. You know it's 4:20 because the little French clock on the mantelpiece says so, gold with a shepherdess, and you're standing in the middle of the drawing room of 30 Portman Square with a coal smut on your cheek, and your apron grey to the knees, and the front door is opening downstairs. And you don't exist. You look at the door to the landing. Too far. You'll meet him on the stairs. The other door, the one into the little back parlour that connects to the servants' stair, is behind you. 6 steps, and you take them, and you have your hand on the handle when you hear it. The laugh. Polly was right. It comes up through the house like weather. A big, rolling, tobacco-soaked laugh. And under it a voice, deep and thick, with the R's rolled in a way that isn't quite English, saying something to Frank, and Frank's voice, higher than you've ever heard it, saying "Sir," and then feet on the front stairs. Heavy feet. Slow. A man who takes stairs one at a time because he's carrying a great deal of himself. You turn the handle. It doesn't turn. The back parlour door is locked. Of course it is. Mr. Rolfe has locked it because the back parlour connects to the servants' stair, and the servants' stair connects to people who don't exist. And this afternoon from 4:30, there must be no way from one world into the other. The feet reach the landing. There's a screen. A Japanese screen. 4 panels, lacquered, black and gold, with cranes on it, that stands in the corner between the back parlour door and the 3rd window, and it's there to hide the door, because a locked door in a drawing room looks like a locked door. You go behind the screen. You go behind it the way water goes down a drain, without deciding, and you press your back against the wall, and you find that you have picked up the coal scuttle again, the empty one, the one you brought up this morning, because your hands wanted something to hold, and you stand there with an empty coal scuttle against your chest and the smell of the lacquer in your nose. The drawing room door opens. "Mrs. Keppel," Mr. Rolfe says in a voice you've never heard him use. His Royal Highness. And then there's another voice, low and warm, from the doorway on the other side, the one from her dressing room, and it's hers. Sir, you've come through the fog. How brave. I've come through the fog, the big voice says, because there is a fire at the end of it. Ha! Rolf, out. The door closes. You do not exist. You're behind a screen with cranes on it holding a coal scuttle, and the Prince of Wales is sitting down. You can hear him do it. The red leather creaks. The footstool scrapes an inch on the carpet. There's a sound like a sigh from the whole of the man, and then a match, and then the smell. That smell, thick and sweet and rich as a cellar, filling the room. Tell me everything, he says. Tell me something wicked. I've had a morning of admirals. You learn a great deal in the next 40 minutes about what it is to be a wall. You learn that the lacquer on a Japanese screen, when you're pressed against the back of it, smells faintly of varnish and dust and, underneath, of something like burnt sugar. You learn that a coal scuttle held against your chest for a long time leaves a curved line of pain across your breastbone. You learn that your own breathing is loud, so loud that you have to breathe through your mouth, slow and shallow, and that even so there's a moment when you're sure, absolutely sure that he's heard it. He hasn't. He's talking. He talks the way he laughs, in big rolling sentences that go on, and the thing you're least prepared for, the thing nobody below stairs ever mentioned, is that he's funny. Not clever funny. Warm funny. He tells her about an admiral who fell asleep at a luncheon and woke up saying fire. He tells her about a dinner at Marlborough House where a bishop mistook a finger bowl for a soup. He tells it in a deep German-flavoured growl with the R's rolled, and every few sentences the laugh comes up out of him and shakes the chair, and she laughs too, a low, easy laugh, not the laugh of a woman being polite. And Alexandra, she says at one point quietly, at Sandringham, deaf as a post and happy as a lark with her dogs, send you her regards. A pause, a creak of leather. She does, you know. She's fond of you. It's a great thing to be fond of the right people. It's the whole art, sir. Ha! The whole art. Yes. You stand there with the scuttle and you think, she's talking about the wife. He's talking about the wife, the Princess of Wales, who is at Sandringham with her dogs, and who sends her regards, and who is fond of her. You had, until this moment, a picture in your head of what this was. It was the picture you'd have had in Norfolk. A wicked prince and a wicked woman and a poor deceived husband and a poor deceived wife somewhere, weeping. And it isn't that. You don't know what it is. But it isn't that. And the not knowing is worse than the picture, because the picture at least had a shape. The tea comes. Mr. Rolfe brings it himself. You hear the door and the small clink of the tray, and Rolfe's voice saying, "Madam," and then the sound of him withdrawing, which is a sound you know now, the particular softness of a well-trained man leaving a room backward. She paused. You hear the china, the little bell note of the cup on the saucer, and then you hear him eat. Cook wasn't wrong. It's not one man. It's an appetite. He eats the way a fire eats, steadily, with small pleased sounds, and she keeps talking while he does it. A story about Lady Somebody's daughter and a curate, and he laughs with his mouth full and says, go on, and there's the sound of a plate being pushed across a table and another being pulled toward the chair. You spoil me. I do, sir. It's one of the few things I'm any good at. You're good at everything. It's a great nuisance. Everyone tells me so. Mrs. Keppel is so clever. Mrs. Keppel is so discreet. Mrs. Keppel never says a word that shouldn't be said. I said to Carrington, I said, that's why I like her. She's the only person in London who's never once told me what I ought to do. The chair creaks. His voice drops. You know they'll say I'm here. They already say it, sir. Does it trouble you? A pause. You can hear the fire. You can hear your own heart. George and I have discussed it, she says. We are agreed. It troubles neither of us. It is an honour, and an honour is a thing you carry with both hands. Another pause. Besides, sir, you're very good company, and the child adores you, and you leave the drawing-room smelling of Havana for 3 days. Mrs. Draycott says she can't get it out of the curtains. I've told her not to try. The laugh, the big one, the one that shakes the floor, and that, in the end, is what nearly kills you. Not the danger, the laugh, because the laugh makes you want to laugh, and you clamp your teeth together and press the cold rim of the scuttle against your lip until it hurts, and something, some tiny thing, some breath, gets out, and there's a silence. Alice, he says, there's someone behind your screen. You have never, in your life, before or since, felt what you feel in that moment. It's not fear. Fear would be a relief. It's the sensation of the floor of the world going soft, of every rule you've been taught in 8 weeks turning at once into the thing that will end you. You'll be dismissed without a character. You'll be on a train to Norwich by Thursday. You'll be the girl who was behind the screen forever in every servants' hall in London because that's how it travels. And then Mrs. Keppel says, in exactly the voice she used to tell you, your grate was fine. That will be Nell, sir. She was seeing to the fire. Nell, come out and make your curtsy, and then you may go. You come out. You come out from behind the screen with the empty coal scuttle in your arms, and coal smut on your face, and your apron grey to the knees, and you make your curtsy, and you raise your eyes because you can't not, and you look at him. He's enormous, that's the first thing. He fills the red chair the way water fills a jug. He's wearing a grey frock coat that must have taken a whole sheep, and a waistcoat with a gold chain across it so thick it could tow a boat, and his legs are stretched out on the footstool with the tea things on a low table beside them. The beard is grey and cut short and square. The face above it is red and heavy and lined, with pouches under the eyes and a nose like a doorknob, and it's the face on the coins, the face on the tobacco tins, the face on the mug your mother has on the dresser at home with the date of the Jubilee on it, and it's looking at you. The eyes are pale blue and slightly bulging, and they're not unkind. That's what undoes you. They're not unkind at all. They look at you the way a man looks at a very small dog that's come into the room with a sort of enormous distracted good nature. Ha, he says, a coal fairy. Good afternoon, Nell. Good afternoon, Your Royal Highness. Mrs. Keppel's fires are the best in London. I've always said so. I said so to Carrington. Now I know why. He picks up a sandwich. Lobster. He puts the whole thing in his mouth and speaks around it. Off you go, coal fairy. Don't tell the newspapers. And you go. You go through the drawing-room door, which is unlocked, and out onto the landing past the closed door of Mr. Rolfe's face, which is a thing you will remember on your deathbed, and down the front stairs, the grand ones, which you have never in your life set foot on, with the scuttle banging against your legs, and through the green baize door and down and into the kitchen, where you set the scuttle on the floor and put both hands flat on the table and stand there. Cook looks at you. Polly looks at you. Ada, at the sink, turns around, which she never does. "What?" Cook says. "He saw me." "Who saw you?" You can't say it. Nobody says it. You open your mouth and what comes out is Kingy. There's a silence in the kitchen like the silence after a plate breaks. Then Cook puts down her spoon and wipes her hands on her apron and crosses the kitchen and takes your face in both her red hands and looks at it, the smut and the sweat and whatever else is on it, and says not unkindly, "Well, you're still here. Mrs. Keppel said I was seeing to the fire. Then you were seeing to the fire." Cook lets go of your face. "Sit down. Polly, tea, strong, and sugar, and don't look at me like that. Girl's had a fright. You sit. You sit down at a table with a cup of tea in front of you at 5:15 in the afternoon, and nobody tells you to get up, and it's the first time you've sat down in daylight since you came to London, and the tea is scalding and thick with sugar, and you hold it with both hands, and your hands shake so that the cup rattles on the saucer, and Cook says nothing, and Polly stares, and upstairs, faint and rolling, coming down through 3 floors of the house like the sound of a river under ice, you can hear him laugh. Ivy finds you there at 5:30. She comes down the back stairs at a run and stops in the kitchen door and looks at you, and you can see her put it together, and she comes and sits down opposite and says, "Very low. Tell me." You tell her. When you're done, she sits back and lets out a long breath. "God in heaven," she says. "The parlour door. Rolf locked the parlour door. Of course he did, and nobody told you." She shakes her head. "That's Rolf. That's exactly Rolf. He'll have you out for it." Mrs. Keppel saved your skin, and Rolf will hate you for it, because it should have been Rolf who thought of the door, and it should have been Rolf who thought of the girl, and instead she had to do it in front of him. Ivy looks at the cup in your hands. "Drink that. And when he leaves, you're up top, on the landing, with the stockings, and you don't move till I come. He leaves at 5:50. You're on the top landing with a basket of stockings in your lap and a needle in your hand, and you hear the whole of it from 4 floors up. The drawing-room door, the voice on the stairs, big and warm, saying something to Frank about the fog and something else to Rolf about Tuesday, and then the front door and the cold breath of it coming up the stairwell, and a carriage and a whip, and the square swallowing him. Then the house lets go. You can feel it. You've felt it before at the end of a day, but never like this. It's like a held breath being let out from the attic to the cellar. Doors open, feet move on the back stairs. Frank's voice, ordinary again. Cook banging a pan on purpose, and Mrs. Draycott's bell twice. You go down. The drawing-room has to be done. That's the rule. The drawing-room is done the moment he leaves, so that when Mr. Keppel comes in from his club at 7, which he will, to the minute, he finds his drawing-room as it always is, and can sit in his own chair by his own fire and read his own newspaper. Ivy does the tables. You do the grate and the carpet. The grate is a ruin, 3 inches of white ash where the fire ate itself down. The carpet, around the red chair, is a ring of crumbs and grey ash, and, in one place, a small dark stain of something, tea or foie gras, that Ivy goes at with a cloth and cold water and a face like thunder. The room smells the way she said it would. Havana. It's in the roses, it's in the curtains, it's in your hair, and the red chair, when you pass it with the ash bucket, still holds the shape of him. The leather is pressed in, the cushion is flat. You put out one hand without thinking and touch the arm of it, and it's warm. That's the thing you'll never tell anyone. Not Ivy, not your mother, not anyone. That you touch the warm chair. Mr. Keppel comes in at 7. You hear him from the housemaid's cupboard on the second floor where you're putting away the brushes, his key in the door, his voice in the hall, deep and easy, and the sound of his hat going onto the table and his stick into the stand. He goes up the front stairs 2 at a time. He always does. He's a man who takes stairs 2 at a time because there's so much of him, and it's all in the right places. You hear the drawing room door, you hear him say Alice, and you hear her say, George, you're frozen, come to the fire. And the door closes and there's nothing after that but the ordinary murmur of a husband and wife in a warm room. Ivy is on the landing below and she looks up the stairwell at you, and she doesn't say anything, and you don't say anything. Later, in the attic, you say it. The attic is a room under the roof with a sloping ceiling and a skylight and an iron bed that you and Ivy share, head to foot, because the bed's too narrow to share the other way. There's a washstand with a jug that's had ice in it every morning since October, and a chair and 2 hooks on the wall for your dresses and a candle, and that's all. The window looks at nothing but Skian chimneys. On a clear night you can see the stars, which you didn't expect in London, and which are the only thing in the whole city that look the same as they did at home. You're lying with your feet against Ivy's shoulder and Ivy's feet against yours, and the candle's out, and the cold is coming down through the slate so that your breath makes a small cloud above your face, and you say into the dark, I don't understand it. Ivy's quiet a while, then, which bit? Any of it, Mr. Keppel, her, the princess, sending her regards. All of it. At home, if a married woman, you're not at home. But it's the same. It's the same thing. It's a sin. Course it's a sin. Ivy shifts and the bed creaks. Half of London's a sin. The other half's the servants of the first half. That's not the question. What's the question? Ivy doesn't answer for so long you think she's asleep. Then low. The question is whether they do it well. And they do. You saw. Nobody shouts. Nobody weeps. Nobody's turned out. The husband's at his club till 7 and comes home to a warm fire and a kind wife and a good dinner and a name that opens every door in England. The child's got a pet name for the man who'll be king. The princess sends her regards. You feel her shrug through the mattress. I was in a house in Kensington before this, where the master kept a girl in Pimlico and the mistress found out, and there was screaming for a month, and a footman got the sack for carrying letters, and the mistress took to laudanum. That's a sin done badly. This is a sin done beautifully. Which would you rather scrub the grates in? You lie there and think about it. She was kind to me, you say finally, in front of him. She didn't have to be. No, Ivy says, she didn't. Go to sleep. You don't for a long time. You lie under the slates with your split knuckles stinging and your shoulders aching and the smell of Havana in your hair, and you think about the warm chair, and about a 5-year-old saying Kingy, and about a woman in a blue wrapper with her hair down standing by a fireplace at 7 in the morning saying, it's the kind of nonsense we have to be very good at. You're beginning to understand. Not what it is, what it costs. It costs everyone in the house being very, very good at it. Every day. From the man with the enormous laugh in the red chair down to the girl who blacks the grate. And you were nearly the one who wasn't. Outside, far off, a church clock strikes 11. Ivy's breathing has gone slow and heavy. You turn on your side, careful not to wake her, and pull the blanket up over your ear, and you fall asleep at last, thinking of nothing at all except lard for your hands in the morning. The next morning it's raining. and the steps have to be done anyway. Rolf waits 3 days. That's his way. Ivy told you, and she was right. He doesn't shout and he doesn't dismiss, because dismissing you would mean explaining to Mrs. Keppel why, and Mrs. Keppel has already made it plain, in front of the one person whose opinion matters, that Nell was seeing to the fire. So instead, on Friday morning, when you come up from the cellar with the scuttles, he's standing at the top of the back stairs in his black coat with his hands folded, and he lets you climb all 74 steps toward him before he speaks. Hartley, Mr. Rolfe, you will do the silver on Tuesdays from now on. In addition to your other duties, Frank will show you. He looks at the scuttles in your hands, and you will fill those to the line, not above it. Coal that spills on the stairs is coal that is wasted. Mr. Keppel's coal. Yes, Mr. Rolfe, that's all. He turns and goes through the baize door. And that's the whole of your punishment, and it's a good one, because the silver takes 3 hours and it's done with a paste of rouge and ammonia that makes your eyes stream and gets under your nails so deep it stays there for a week, and it's done on Tuesday afternoons in the butler's pantry with the door shut. Tuesday afternoons, when you'd otherwise be on the top landing with the stockings, listening. He's found a way to make you not exist that also makes you useful. You have to admire it. Frank shows you the silver on the first Tuesday, standing over you in the pantry, which is a narrow room off the kitchen passage with a sink and a plate safe, and a smell of ammonia so sharp it makes your teeth ache. There's a lot of silver. Forks, spoons, the great cold gleaming dishes with their covers, cruets, candlesticks, the teapot from the drawing room that you've never touched, which comes down to you now with a faint pale ring inside the lid where the steam has been. Rouge first, Frank says. Little bit. Rub it in with your thumb along the grain, not across. Then the leather. Then the plate brush for the chasing. Then the chamois. Then breathe on it and look. You breathe on a spoon and look. Your own face, upside down and swollen, looks back. You're doing well, Frank says, which surprises you. He's leaning in the doorway with his arms folded, tall and pale in his shirt sleeves, the striped waistcoat off. Rolf's a sod, but he's a fair sod. Silver's a step up, whatever he meant by it. Ivy never got the silver. I'd rather not have had it. No, he grins. But you got seen. That's the thing. Half the girls in London would give their teeth to be looked at by him and told they were a fairy. My sister works in a house in Belgrave Square, and the most exciting thing that's ever happened to her is a bishop's hat blew off. What's he like? To you. Frank thinks about it. Generous. Talks to you. Asks about your mother. Knows my name, knows Albert's. At Christmas there's a sovereign each wrapped in paper, and he hands it to you himself and says something. He shifts his weight. He's a fat old man who likes his dinner. That's what he's like. And he's the Prince of Wales. And he'll be king. And he comes to this house on Tuesdays and sometimes Thursdays and sits in that chair. And that's what makes this the finest place in service in England. Finest. Finest. You know what I get? £32 a year and all found and livery and a sovereign at Christmas from the Prince of Wales. And when I leave here, if I leave here, there's not a house in Mayfair won't take me on the name alone. Keppel's man. That's what I'll be. For life. He pushes off the doorframe. Don't get the rouge on your cuffs. Rolf checks. You do the silver. It's slow work and it's blinding work, and by the end of 3 hours your eyes are red and your thumbs are raw and there's a ringing in your ears from the ammonia. But there's something in it. You put a fork down on the green baize, done, and it lies there catching the gaslight like a piece of the moon, and you put another beside it, and another, and slowly the table fills up with light and you think, I did that. Nobody else. And you think of the sovereign wrapped in paper and the name that opens every door. And you think of Ivy's question in the dark. Which sin would you rather scrub the grates in? And you begin to understand that the answer is this one. That's a strange thing to learn at 17. That your life is going to be spent being invisible in the service of something that half the country would call wicked, and that you're going to be proud of it. You put the last spoon down. December comes in with a fog. Not a fog like Norfolk fog, which is white and wet and smells of the sea. A London fog, a real one, what people call a particular, and you've heard of them and read of them, and nothing prepared you. It comes in on the 3rd of December in the night, and when you go up to do the steps at 5:30, you open the area door and there's a wall. Yellow-brown, like old paper held to a candle, and thick, so thick that the lamp on the corner of the square, 20 yards off, is a smear the size of a thumbprint, and the air tastes of coal and sulphur and something rotten, and when you breathe it, your throat closes and you cough till your eyes water. You do the steps by touch. Your hands find the stone, and the block, and the bucket, and the water in the bucket has soot floating on it already. And the steps are grey again 5 minutes after you've done them, and you do them anyway, because the rule is that the steps are done. Inside the house it's not much better. The fog comes in. It comes under the doors and through the sash windows, and it lies in the hall in a low brown haze at ankle height, and the gas jets burn with a halo round them, and the smell is everywhere, in the linen, in the food, in your hair. Mrs. Keppel doesn't go out. Nobody goes out. Violet's cough gets worse, and Nanny keeps the nursery fire built up so high you're carrying scuttles to the 3rd floor every hour, up the black stairs with a candle, your own breath a cloud in front of you, and on the landing you meet nobody and hear nothing but your own boots. And on the 5th of December, in the fog, the carriage still comes. You hear it from the pantry, where you're on the silver, the bell, the heavy feet, Rolf's voice, and then, on the stairs, the laugh, but changed, thick and wheezing, with a cough in it that goes on, and Mrs. Keppel's voice above it, low and quick and worried. He's come through the fog, through that. And somewhere in you, under the ammonia and the ache, something you'd have to call respect. That's the day the war comes into the house. You've known there's a war. Everyone knows. It's in South Africa, against the Boers, and it started in October before you came, and the newspaper's doors reads at breakfast have been full of it. Ladysmith, Kimberley, Mafeking, names you can't picture, towns under siege. But it's been far off the way things in newspapers are until the 2nd week of December, when, on 3 days in a row, the British Army loses 3 battles. Stormberg, Magersfontein, Colenso. The newspapers call it Black Week. Dawes reads it out at the servants' table on the Saturday morning, with his voice gone strange, and Cook sets down the teapot, and Frank, who has a brother in the Royal Fusiliers, gets up and goes out of the room, and nobody says anything. That afternoon, in the drawing-room when you go up with the coal, the newspapers on the little table by the red chair, folded to the casualty lists, and there's a pencil mark against one name. You don't know whose, you don't look. But you understand that the man who sits in that chair on Tuesdays has to read those lists too, and that when he came through the fog on the 5th with his cough, that was 3 days before the lists came, and he'd known already. They always know first. Frank's brother's name isn't on them. Not that week. Frank comes back into the hall at supper with his face washed and eats his bread without looking at anyone, and Cook puts an extra sausage on his plate without a word. Christmas is quiet. The Keppels go to Sandringham. Not Mrs. Keppel alone, both of them. Mr. and Mrs. George Keppel, guests of the Prince and Princess of Wales for the new year, with Miss Draper and Dawes and half the luggage in the house, and the Princess, Ivy says, is delighted because the Princess likes Mrs. Keppel, and likes Mr. Keppel even more because he's tall and handsome and shoots well and never bores her. The Princess likes her, you say. You're in the attic, undressing in the dark because the candle's finished. She really likes her. Ivy, how does that work? How does a wife... Ask the wife. I'm asking you. Ivy's silent, rustling. Then, my mother had 6 children and a husband who drank. Every Friday he'd come home with his wages gone, and she'd take a poker to him, and he'd take his fist to her, and it went on 12 years till he fell in the river. That's marriage in Bermondsey. She gets into bed, feet first, cold against your shoulder. Up here it's different. Up here a husband's a name and a house and the money, and a wife's a name and a house and the money and the rest of it. The bit you and me would think was the point. That's a separate department, like the wine. Somebody sees to it, and if the wife's clever, and the Princess is very clever, she picks who sees to it. She picks somebody who won't shame her, and won't be greedy, and won't try to get into the wife's chair. And that's Mrs. Keppel. She never once tries to get into the wife's chair. Everybody says so. That's cold. That's not cold. Bermondsey's cold. This is warm as toast. That's what I keep telling you. The house with the family gone is a different house. Rolf and Mrs. Draycott turn it inside out. Carpets up, curtains down, every wall washed, every chandelier drop taken off its wire, and washed in soapy water and dried and hung back, 300 of them, by you and Ivy on step-ladders in the drawing-room with your arms above your heads for 2 days until you can't lift a cup. The red chair is covered in a dust sheet. You stand and look at it, one afternoon, shrouded, and it looks like nothing. A lump under a sheet. It's a strange thing. How much of what a thing means is who's near it. On Christmas Day you have roast goose in the servants' hall, and cook cries because she's had sherry, and Frank does his imitation of the prince, which he only does when the family's away, puffing his cheeks and rolling his R's. Tell me something wicked, Mrs. Keppel. And everyone laughs except Rolf, who isn't there, and Ada, who never laughs. You get a letter from your mother. It smells of home, of the range and the damp, and it says the marshes have flooded and the rector's wife has died, and your brother Tom has grown out of his boots again, and would you send what you can? You send 15 shillings, which is most of your quarter's wages, and you're not sorry. You've eaten goose. Tom hasn't. On the last night of the century, you and Ivy climb out onto the leads. That's the roof. There's a trapdoor in the attic ceiling with a ladder, and Ivy found it her first year, and on the night of the 31st of December, 1899, with the family in Norfolk and the fog gone and a hard, clear frost on everything, you go up. Ivy first, then you, hauling yourself through the hatch with your skirts bunched in one hand, out onto a flat-leaded space between 2 chimney stacks, with a low parapet, and the whole of London around you. You've never seen it. You've been here 4 months, and you've seen the kitchen and the stairs and the square and the shops on Baker Street on your half-day, and that's all. And now here it is. Chimneys, thousands of them. A forest. Every one with its thread of smoke going straight up in the still air. Roofs, slate, shining with frost. To the south, a long low glow that Ivy says is the Strand and the theatres. To the east, a great dark shape with a light on it, which is the dome of St. Paul's, and you can't believe it's that near. To the west, the black mass of the park, and over all of it stars more than you've ever seen in London, because the fog's gone and the cold has scrubbed the sky. Listen, Ivy says. You listen. And it starts. One bell, then another, then all of them. Every church in London ringing in the year 1900. The sound coming over the roofs from every direction at once, so that it's not a sound so much as a shaking of the air. And under it, rising up from the streets, from Oxford Street and the Edgware Road and every public house between, the sound of people cheering. Ivy's crying. You didn't expect that. She's standing at the parapet with her thin arms wrapped round herself and the tears running down, and she doesn't wipe them. What is it? Nothing. Everything. She laughs wet. New century. And here's me, on a roof, in service. 19. And I'll be in service when I'm 40. And so will you. And the bells don't care. She wipes her face with her sleeve. It's beautiful, though, isn't it? It is. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And you're 17, and you're standing above the greatest city in the world with a girl from Bermondsey, and the bells are ringing in a century that's going to be, everyone says, the best there's ever been. And your hands hurt, and your feet hurt, and you're happy. That's the strange part. You're happy. Frank says the old Queen won't see the year out, Ivy says. Frank says everyone knows, and then it'll be him, and then this house. She stops. What? Nothing. She looks down at the leads. Then this house will be the second most important house in England, that's all, and we'll be in it. Come on, I'm frozen. You go down through the hatch, into the attic, into the bed, head to foot. The bells go on for an hour. You fall asleep to them. The family comes back on the 8th of January, and Mrs. Keppel, when she comes up the front stairs with her hand on Mr. Keppel's arm, is walking differently. Slower. One hand, you notice, resting on the front of her coat. Ivy notices too. On the landing later with the brushes, she says nothing, but she looks at you and raises her eyebrows and counts on her fingers and stops at 5. May, she says, or June. How do you... I've got eyes, and so has Cook, and so has Miss Draper, and so, I'll bet you a shilling, has Nanny. It'll be all over the square by Easter. She goes back to the brushes. Another little Keppel, God help us, that's another fire. You go down for the coal. And you think, going down the black stairs with the empty scuttles knocking against your knees, about the red chair and the warm leather, and a fat old man with a cough saying, "Tell me something wicked." And you count on your own fingers, backward, from May, and you get to a month, and you stop. You don't say it. Nobody says it. But you think it, on the stairs, and you carry it down into the cellar with you, and you shovel coal on top of it, and you carry it up again, and it's still there. The man at the railings comes in February. You're on the steps. It's a Wednesday, a grey damp morning with the smell of rain in it, and you're on the 4th step with the hearthstone, and a pair of boots stops on the pavement above you. Good boots. Brown, polished, with a little mud on the welt. You don't look up. You've learned not to look up. People stop on the pavement all the time to light a pipe, to read a letter, to look at the garden, and none of them are anything to do with you. Cold morning for it, the boots say. You keep rubbing. 30 this is, Keppel. Not a question. You'd be one of the maids. I'd be busy, sir? He laughs. It's a pleasant laugh. He crouches, and you see the rest of him. A man of 30 or so, clean-shaven, with a bowler and a brown overcoat with a velvet collar, and a face that's friendly in the way a shopkeeper's is friendly. He holds a little card between 2 fingers. I won't keep you. I know you've the greats to do. My name's Hollis. I write for a paper. He says the name of the paper and it means nothing to you. I'm doing a piece. Society. Who calls where? Very light. Nothing unkind. He turns the card over and there's a sovereign on the back of it. Gold, catching what light there is. Just a word or two about who's been to tea. Tuesdays. Nothing you'd get in trouble for. Nothing anybody would ever know came from you. You look at the sovereign. You can't help it. A sovereign is a pound. A pound is a month of your wages. A pound is Tom's boots and a bag of flour and the rent your mother's 3 weeks behind on, which she said in the last letter and then said not to mind. It sits on the card in the man's fingers, and it's the colour of the bells on New Year's Eve. I don't know what you mean, sir. Course you don't. He doesn't move. Only it's very well known. Everybody in the square knows. I'm not asking you to tell me anything that isn't already in every drawing room in Mayfair. I'm asking you to tell me what time, which days, whether the husband's at home, a pause, whether the lady's expecting. The block stops in your hand. He sees it. He's a man who watches for that. Ah, he says softly. You stand up. You stand up with the block in one hand and the bucket in the other, and you're taller than him now because he's crouched and you're on the step, and you say, in a voice you didn't know you had, a voice that sounds like Mrs. Draycott, I'm the under housemaid, sir. I do the steps and the grates. I don't know anything about anybody's tea. And if you're still on this pavement when I come back up with the brass, I'll fetch Mr. Rolfe, and Mr. Rolfe will fetch a constable. The man looks at you for a long moment. Then he stands and puts the card back in his pocket, sovereign and all, and touches his hat. Keppel's girl, he says. They breed 'em well here. And he walks off round the square. You go down the area steps and your legs give out on the fourth one and you sit on the cold iron with the bucket between your knees and shake. You don't tell Rolfe. You think about it for a whole day and you don't. Because Rolfe would ask what the man said and you'd have to say whether the lady's expecting, and then Rolfe would know that you'd stopped and that the man had seen you stop, and whatever came after that would be worse than the man. You tell Ivy. Ivy's face goes white and then red. A sovereign, she says. A sovereign. The cheek. The bloody cheek. She's furious in a way you don't understand at first, and then you do. She's furious because it was so much, and because it was so little. Did you take it? No. Good. Because if you'd took it, you'd have been out by Friday and in the river by Sunday, one way or the other. They always find out. Always. The papers don't pay for what they print, they pay for what they can hold over you after. She sits down on the bed. It'll be the baby. That's why they've come sniffing. Somebody's counted on their fingers, same as me. Ivy, is it? Don't. Sharp. Don't say it. Don't think it. Don't ever, ever say it in this house or any house. It's Mr. Keppel's. Mr. Keppel's name. Mr. Keppel's house. Mr. Keppel's child. That's what it is, and that's all it is, and that's the only thing it can ever be. She looks at you hard. Do you understand me? Whatever's in your head, that's where it stays. That's the job. That's the whole job. You carry it up and down the stairs with the coal, and you never set it down. Yes, you say. Say it. It's Mr. Keppel's. Right. She lets out a breath. Now. You told the man you'd fetch Rolfe. That was good. That was very good. Keppel's girl, he said. And she laughs, suddenly, the old laugh, and pushes you. Keppel's girl. Listen to you. You get your half day on the second Sunday. 2 o'clock till 9, once a fortnight, and it's the first one you've had since Christmas because of the fog and the spring cleaning, and you don't know what to do with it. Ivy takes you to the park. Hyde Park is a 15-minute walk from the square, down through streets that get grander as you go, and then a gate, and then grass. Real grass going on forever, and trees, bare but enormous, and the sky opening out over your head like a lid coming off. It's a cold, bright day, and the whole of London seems to be walking. Ladies in furs, nursemaids with perambulators like small carriages, soldiers in red, boys on the Serpentine with model boats, and an old woman selling hot chestnuts from a brazier. And Ivy buys a bag, and you eat them walking, burning your fingers on the shells, and the taste of them is the taste of being outside for the first time in 3 months. You walk along the water. The Serpentine's grey and flat, and there are ducks on it. That's where the swells ride, Ivy says, pointing at a wide sandy track along the side of the park. Rotten Row. Of a morning, before we've done the grates, they're all along there on the horses, hundreds, saying good morning to each other. Mrs. K rides there. So does he, sometimes. Or used to. She kicks a stone. It's like a shop window, that's what it is. They're all in it, and we're all outside looking in, and that's the way of it. Do you mind? Ivy thinks. I mind that he've got no teeth on this side, she says, and pulls her lip back to show you 2 gaps at the back where a Bermondsey childhood took them. I mind that Frank'll marry a cook with £100 put by, and I'll marry nobody. I mind the cold. I don't mind them. She nods at the row. You can't mind the weather. A carriage goes past on the road behind, a good one, black and shining, with a coachman in a top hat and a lady inside with a veil, and the lady leans forward, and you see the face, and you say, "Oh," and stop. What? That was her, Mrs. Keppel. Was it? Ivy doesn't turn her head. Well, don't wave. She's not ours out here. You stand there with the chestnut cooling in your hand and watch the carriage go, and it's the strangest feeling. You know what the woman's washstand looks like. You know which side of the bed she sleeps on. You've stood behind a screen 6 feet from her while she poured tea for a prince. And she's gone past you in the park like a stranger, because out here that's what you are. She's not ours out here. Nobody's anybody's out here. That's what the park is for. You walk back as it gets dark. The lamps are coming on. You go in by the area, and cook has kept you a plate, and the kitchen is warm, and you're glad, honestly glad, to be back inside the walls. Spring comes late and hard. March is snow. April is rain, and the steps run with it. And Mrs. Keppel gets bigger and slower, and stops going out, and the callers on Tuesday mornings thin out, because a lady who's expecting doesn't receive, not properly, and the carriage on Tuesday afternoons keeps coming. That's what you notice. Keeps coming, right through, 4:30, Tuesdays, sometimes Thursdays, the bell and the feet and the laugh, and Rolf locks the parlour door and you do the silver, and Mrs. Keppel, who by April can't get out of the red chair's neighbour without Frank's arm, sits and pours tea for the Prince of Wales with her hand resting on the front of her gown. You see her once, in that month. She's on the first floor landing going slowly toward the drawing room, and she stops and puts her hand on the wall and stands there a moment breathing. And you're on the back stairs, at the turn, with the cans, and she doesn't see you and you watch her, the broad calm face, the eyes closed, and then she opens them and straightens and puts her chin up and goes on into the drawing room, and you hear her voice warm and steady. "Sir, how good of you," and the laugh. That's when you stop asking Ivy's question. Which sin would you rather scrub the great sin? Because you've seen the answer stand on a landing with her eyes closed, and then go in and pour the tea, and whatever it is, it's not a sin done easily. It's work. It's work done every day, in a corset, with your chin up, and you know a little about that now, and it makes you feel something toward her that you wouldn't say out loud. The middle of May, the whole of London goes mad. You're on the back stairs on the evening of the 18th with a bucket when the noise starts. It comes from everywhere. Shouting, a bell, then 20. Fireworks, actual fireworks, going up somewhere over Oxford Street with a crack that rattles the skylight. You run down to the kitchen and everyone's there, Frank with his coat half on, Cook with a spoon, Polly with her mouth open, and Dawes comes down the stairs with the newspaper held over his head like a flag, and he's shouting, Dawes, who never raises his voice, Mafeking. They've relieved Mafeking. 217 days. That's how long the little town in South Africa was under siege. And Frank tells you the number and you don't know why he knows it. And then you remember his brother. The Keppels let the whole household out. Rolf stands at the area door with his watch and says, 11, not a minute after. And you go. All of you. Up into the square. And the square's full. And Baker Street's full. And Oxford Street, when you get to it, is a river. People, thousands, packed so tight you can't fall down, singing, waving flags, flags from nowhere, Union Jacks on sticks and Union Jacks on umbrellas, and one man with a Union Jack painted on his bald head, brass bands. Girls being carried on men's shoulders, a cab with 15 people on the roof. Somebody puts a paper hat on you. Somebody else kisses you, a soldier, on the cheek, and is gone before you can hit him. Ivy screaming with laughter, holding your arm so she won't be swept away, and the noise is like the inside of a drum, and the air smells of gunpowder and beer and hot people, and it's the first time since you came to London that you've been part of the city instead of under it. You get back at 3 minutes to 11, and Rolf looks at his watch and says nothing and lets you in. And 6 days later, on the 24th of May, which is the old Queen's birthday, so that all the bells are ringing anyway, Mrs. Keppel's child comes. It starts before dawn. You know because the bell goes, the one from Mrs. Keppel's room, and it goes on going, and then Miss Draper's feet on the landing running, and Mrs. Draycott's door, and then Rolf's voice in the hall, and the front door, and Frank's boots on the pavement going for the doctor at a run. You're in the scullery with Ada by 5, filling the copper. That's your job today. That's the whole of your job. Hot water. Cans of it. Brass cans. Up 74 stairs. To the 2nd floor. To the door of Mrs. Keppel's room, where Miss Draper takes them from you without a word and shuts the door, and you go down and fill them again. Up, down, up. Your arms go after the 10th trip. They just go, a hot dead ache from the shoulder, and you carry on with your back and your legs and your teeth. The house is silent in a way you've never heard it. Nobody talks. Mr. Keppel is in the drawing-room, alone, and when you pass the door with the cans you can hear him walking, up and down, up and down. The doctor comes at 6:30, a man with a bag and a beard, and goes up, and the door shuts. At 8, on the landing with 2 cans, you hear her. Not a scream. She doesn't scream. It's a long, low sound, deep, like something being dragged over stone, and then a silence, and then again. Miss Draper opens the door for the cans, and her face is grey and her sleeves are wet to the elbow, and behind her, in the room, you see nothing. A screen, a lamp, and the sound again, and the door shuts. You go down. You fill the cans. Your hands are shaking so that the water spills. Drink this, cook says, and it's tea, and you drink it standing and go up again. At 11:20, the bells of St. Marylebone start ringing for the Queen's birthday. All across the roofs, a great bright brassy racket, and under it, in the house, on the 2nd floor, a baby cries. thin, high, furious, a sound like a cat in a bag, coming through the door and down the stairwell and into every corner of the house at once. And you're on the landing with 2 cans, and you set them down, and you stand there with your hands hanging. The door opens. Miss Draper, her face is wet. "A girl," she says. "Nell, bring those in." "You bring them in. You've never been in Mrs. Keppel's room while she was in it. You've made the bed and poured the water and carried the slops with your eyes down. And now you go in with 2 brass cans, and it's hot, and it smells of blood and sweat and carbolic and something sweetish underneath. And there are basins on every surface and cloths on the floor, and the doctor is washing his hands at the stand with his back to you and the bed. She's lying in it, propped. Her hair is dark with sweat and loose all over the pillow, and her face is white as the sheet, and she is, in that moment, the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, because she's looking at what she's holding, and what she's holding is a small red furious thing in a piece of flannel that's waving one fist and yelling with its whole self. "Nell," Mrs. Keppel says, her voice is a rag, "come and look. You come and look. It's a baby. It's just a baby." Red, wrinkled, with a smear of black hair and its eyes screwed shut and its mouth open and the fist going. It looks like every baby you've ever seen. It looks like your brother Tom did. It doesn't look like anyone. "Her name is Sonia," Mrs. Keppel says. "Sonia Rosemary. She's beautiful, madam. She's a fright. She's the ugliest thing I ever saw. Look at her." And she laughs weakly, and the baby yells louder, and Miss Draper says, "Madam, you must rest," and takes the child, and Mrs. Keppel's head goes back on the pillow, and her eyes close, and she says with them closed, Tell George he has another daughter." "Yes, madam." "You go out. You go down the front stairs, because it's faster and nobody stops you, and you knock on the drawing-room door and open it, and Mr. Keppel turns from the window, 6'4" of him, with his beautiful face gone haggard, and you say, "A girl, sir," Mrs. Keppel says to tell you, "Sonia, both well." And George Keppel, who has never in 9 months looked at you, looks at you. "Thank you," he says. "Thank you, Nell." He knows your name too. He's always known. He just never had anything to say to you before. You go down to the kitchen, and cook has the sherry out, and everyone drinks, even Ada, even Rolf, who comes down for one glass and stands by the range and says, "Mr. Keppel's daughter. God bless her," and drinks it and goes back up. "Mr. Keppel's daughter. You drink the sherry. It's sweet and it goes to your head at once because you've eaten nothing since 5. And you think about the small red furious thing in the flannel and the fist going and the bells for the old queen ringing over the roofs, and you think, I carried the water, that's all. I carried the water for that. And it's a strange thing to say on a story about sleep, but you should know it, lying there in the dark, so I'll say it plain. That baby, the ugliest thing her mother ever saw, would grow up and marry a man called Roland Cubitt, and have a daughter called Rosalind, who would marry an army officer called Bruce Shand, and have a daughter in 1947 called Camilla, and in May of 2023, in Westminster Abbey, that daughter would be crowned Queen. That's the line. Portman Square, the 2nd floor, the 24th of May, 1900. A housemaid with 2 brass cans. It runs straight through. You wash the cans. There are 9 of them. It takes an hour. He comes to see the baby on the first Tuesday in June. You're not behind a screen this time. You're on the nursery stairs with a can, and you hear the feet on the landing below, slow and heavy, and Mrs. Keppel's voice and Nanny's voice gone tight and high, saying, "Sir, and then the nursery door, and you stand at the turn of the stair with the can going cold in your hand and listen, because there's no rule against listening on the stairs, only against being seen. Well, the big voice says. Well, let's have a look at her. A pause. Good God, she's furious. She's always furious, sir, Mrs. Keppel says. She was born furious. I'm told it passes. It doesn't. I've been furious for 58 years. Ha! Look at that fist. She'll box. A creak, as of a large man bending. Hello, Sonia. Hello. Yes, I know. Life's very unfair. You'll get used to it. The voice goes softer than you've ever heard it. There now. And Violet's voice, 6 now, high and clear. Kingy, will you do the bread? Violet, Nanny says, like a door shutting. No, let her. Bring the bread, Nanny, and the butter, and a clean plate. Alice, sit down. You look like a ghost. You don't know what the bread is. You find out later from Nanny, who tells it to cook with her mouth pressed flat as if she disapproves and her eyes shining as if she doesn't. It's a game. He sits with his legs stretched out, and Violet puts 2 slices of bread and butter, buttered side down, on his trouser legs, one on each knee, and the slices race each other to the floor, sliding on the cloth, and they bet on which will win, a penny each, and he always lets her win. And the trousers, which are the finest in England, are ruined with butter, and his valet has to see to them, and he doesn't care. That's Kingy. That's the man who'll be king. He plays races with bread and butter on his legs in a nursery in Portman Square with a 6-year-old and a 3-week-old baby yelling in the cot, and the child calls him Kingy and he answers to it. You go down with the can. You've stopped being surprised by the house. That's how you know you belong to it. Summer. The square is green and the windows are open, and the smell of the horse dung in the streets comes up thick and sweet in the heat, and the milk goes off by noon, and the fires still have to be lit in the mornings because the family wants them, even in July, for the look of the thing. The baby grows. Nanny takes her out in the perambulator, a great black-sprung thing, with a nursemaid, a new girl called Emmy, 14, who cries more than Polly. Mrs. Keppel goes to the sea. Mr. Keppel goes to Scotland. The house half empties, and Ivy says this is the year they'll do the drains, and they do the drains, and for a week the whole basement smells like the mouth of hell, and you scrub everything twice, and then autumn, and then winter, and then, on the 22nd of January, 1901, a Tuesday at 6:30 in the evening, on the Isle of Wight, in a house called Osborne, the old Queen dies. You hear it the way the whole city hears it, which is that it goes quiet. Frank comes in from the square at 7 with a newspaper and doesn't need to say anything. You can see it in the street. The cabs have slowed. The boys on the corners aren't shouting, and over the roofs, from every church at once, a single bell, tolling slow, once, and a long gap, and once the sound they use for a death, and it goes on, and cook sits down at the kitchen table and puts her apron over her head. She was the only queen anyone had ever known. 63 years. Cook was born under her, and Mrs. Draycott was born under her, and Rolf was born under her, and your mother's mother, and now there's a king, and the king is the fat old man with the cough who sits in the red chair. You don't sleep. Nobody does. You lie in the attic with Ivy's feet against your shoulder and the bell tolling through the slates, and you think, it's him now. He's the king, and he'll never come here again. That's what you think. That's what everyone thinks. The house goes into mourning like every house in England. The curtains drawn, the knocker muffled in crape. Black bands on everyone's arm. Mrs. Keppel in black to the ground so that she looks, on the stairs, like a tall dark candle, and the drawing room silent, and the red chair with its dust sheet over it, and for 3 weeks no carriage comes. Then, on the second Tuesday in February, Rolf locks the parlour door. You're on the back stairs when you see him do it, and you stop, and your heart does something complicated. He turns, he sees you, and for the first time in 15 months, Mr. Rolf the butler says something to you that isn't an order. Well, Hartley, his face is perfectly still. It appears we're still in business. And at 4:30, the bell. The feet are slower. The cough is worse. But the laugh is the same, and the voice on the stairs, and Mrs. Keppel's voice from the drawing-room door, and the chair creaking, and the match. It's the King. The King of England and Emperor of India and Defender of the Faith has come to tea at Portman Square with his mistress 3 weeks after his mother's funeral, and the whole house, from the attic to the coal hole, breathes out. Frank tells you afterward, in the pantry, over the silver. He's changed his mind about nothing, Frank says. Not one thing. 30 years he's waited. 30 years she kept him out of everything, wouldn't let him see a state paper, treated him like a schoolboy, and now he's got it, and he's 60, and he's got a heart like a bad clock, and he's not going to give up his Tuesdays. Not for God, not for the papers, not for the Archbishop of Canterbury. He breathes on a fork. And he's not wrong. What's the point of being king if you can't have your tea where you like? But it's different. You feel the difference in the walls. The callers on Tuesday mornings who thinned out when the baby was coming come back, and there are more of them, and they're grander, and they stay longer, and they leave cards in a tray in the hall that Frank empties twice a day now, and some of the names on the cards, when Ivy reads them out in the attic, make Ivy whistle. Because she's got his ear, Ivy says. That's why. Every man in England wants something from the king, and the king listens to her, and never once, Frank says, never once has she asked him for anything for herself. So they come to her. Duchesses, ministers, that French one with the beard. They come and they sit in the drawing room and they say, Mrs. Keppel, if you could just mention to His Majesty. And she smiles and pours the tea and says nothing, and somehow it gets mentioned. Ivy turns over. That's power, Nell. That's real power. Not the crown, the chair next to it. The money changes too. You notice it in the coal. It's better coal, and more of it, and nobody counts the scuttles anymore. The roses in the drawing room are out of season every week. There are new carpets on the front stairs, and a new carriage, and a second footman for the second footman, a boy called Walter, so that Frank and Albert can stand on the box. And there's a name below stairs that you hear more and more. Cassell. Sir Ernest Cassell, the King's banker, the richest man in England, who is Mrs. Keppel's friend, and who, Dawes says, looking at nobody, sees to the investments. What investments? Mrs. Keppel's, Dawes says, and turns the page. You put it with the rest. Under the coal. The coronation is meant to be in June of 1902 and isn't. He gets ill. 2 days before, the newspapers say, appendicitis, an operation, the whole of London with its flags up and its stands built, and its foreign kings and princes lodged in every grand house in Mayfair, and the king on a table at Buckingham Palace, with a surgeon cutting him open. Mrs. Keppel doesn't leave the house for a week. You bring her cans, and she's sitting by the window with her hands in her lap, not reading, and once, when you come in, she's crying silently, with her face turned to the glass, and she doesn't stop when she sees you, and you set the can down and go out and shut the door so gently it doesn't click. He lives. He's tough as an old boot, Frank says, and that's the truth of it. The coronation happens in August instead, on a hot bright morning the 9th, and the family goes to the Abbey in the new carriage at 7, and Mrs. Keppel wears a gown you helped Ivy carry up the stairs in its box and couldn't stop staring at. Grey satin with pearls and a hat like a small cloud. And you go too, not to the Abbey, to the street. Rolf lets you out at 8, you and Ivy and Polly and Emmy, with a shilling each from Mr. Keppel, and you walk down through crowds that make Mafeking night look like a Sunday, to a corner of Whitehall where Ivy says the procession will pass, and you stand there for 5 hours in the sun in your black dress and your white cap, with people pressed against you on every side, and the smell of oranges and sweat and horse. And when the coach comes, you see it for perhaps 4 seconds. Gold. All gold, glittering with 8 horses in crimson, and a glimpse through the glass of a crown and a beard and a fat red face turning from side to side, and the roar that goes up around you is a thing you feel in your ribs. "That's him," Polly says, weeping. "That's him, that's him. That's him," you say. And you don't say, "I've seen him with a lobster sandwich in his mouth. I've seen him say, 'Don't tell the newspapers.' I've seen his chair warm." Ivy tells you that night, in the attic, what happened inside the Abbey. She had it from Frank, who had it from Dawes, who had it from Mr. Keppel's own mouth at the club. There was a box, a special gallery, above the chancel, and the king had it built and filled it with the women he cared for. His friends, the newspapers called them. Mrs. Keppel was in it. So was Lady Warwick, who'd had the chair before her, and Sarah Bernhardt the actress, and 2 or 3 others. And the whole of the Abbey, all the peers and bishops and foreign princes, looked up at it, and knew exactly what it was, and nobody said a word. "They're calling it the King's Loose Box," Ivy says, "like at the stables, where you put the mares. That's foul. That's London." Ivy's quiet a moment. "She held her head up," Frank says, "the whole 4 hours. Grey satin and pearls and her chin up, and when they put the crown on him she looked at him straight, and Lady Warwick cried, but she didn't. And when it was over and they came out into the sun, half the House of Lords went over to her carriage to bow. A shift in the dark. So, foul. But she won it, whatever it was." You lie there and think about the woman on the landing with her eyes closed and her chin going up, and her going in. "Ivy," you say, "are you leaving?" The silence goes on too long. "How did you know?" "You've been strange since Easter, and you don't count the drops on the chandelier any more," she laughs low. "There's a place. Head housemaid, in a house in Curzon Street. £40 in my own room. Rolf's given me a character. Keppel's girl." A pause. "I'm 22, Nell. I've got to go up or I've got to go out, and I'm not going out." "When?" "Michaelmas." You don't say anything. You lie with her feet against your shoulder, the way you've lain for 3 years, and you look at the skylight and you think, "I'll have my own bed," and you'd give anything not to. "You'll be upper," Ivy says. Rolf's already said. He said it to Draycott. "Hartley is steady." That's what he said. Steady. She nudges you with her foot. "Coal fairy. Steady. Don't." Steady as a rock. Sees to the fire. Frightens journalists. Carries the water. Her voice goes wobbly. "You'll do. You'll do fine. And I'll be in Curzon Street with my own room and a bed that's got no feet in it, and I'll hate it." She goes at Michaelmas. She goes on a Tuesday in the morning with her tin box up the area steps and turns at the top and looks down at you standing at the door and says, "Fill them to the line," and goes. That afternoon at 4:30 the bell rings, and you're on the top landing with the stockings alone, and the laugh comes up through the house, and you sit and listen to it with your needle in your hand and the tears running down, and you let them. The next morning there's a new girl, under housemaid, 15, from Suffolk, with a tin box and a rector's letter and boots too small, standing in the kitchen passage with her eyes like saucers. Her name is Kate. You take her down to the cellar. This, you say, is the coal. Years go by the way years go by in a house, which is to say in circles. The steps, the grates, the coal. Kate learns them and cries less, and then stops crying. And one morning you find her on the 4th step with the hearthstone humming, and you think, there, she's caught. And you go down to the cellar and stand in the dark a moment with the candle. Because that was you, and it doesn't seem so long ago, and it's 5 years. You're up a housemaid. You've the front stairs and the drawing-room tables and the chandelier, and £40 a year, and a room of your own under the roof, which is the old room with the skylight, and a bed with nobody's feet in it, and you hate it for a month and then you don't. You've a black dress for afternoons and a white cap with streamers and a way of coming into a room that means nobody looks at you twice. You've a face, Kate tells you once, red with daring, like Mrs. Draycott's when she's counting. You've stopped counting on your fingers. There's nothing to count. Sonia's Mr. Keppel's daughter and always was, and she has his height and his laugh, and she sits on the stairs with her leg stuck out and shouts, "Nell!" when she wants a story, and you give her one if Nanny's not looking. Violet's at school. Violet writes poems and is rude to the footmen and adores her mother in a way that frightens you, hungrily, the way a dog adores. And on Tuesdays, the bell. You know the sound of him now, the way you know the sound of the house settling. You could tell you the year from the feet on the stairs. In 1903 they're heavy. In 1905 they stop at the turn. In 1907 Frank goes up ahead of him, and you hear Frank's voice, very low. "Take your time, sir," and the King's, "Damn your time, Frank," and the laugh, and the cough that comes after the laugh now and goes on till Mrs. Keppel says, "Sir, sit." He's 66. He's fat and his chest is bad, and he smokes 12 cigars a day and eats 5 dinners, and the whole of Europe calls him uncle, and he's held it together, Dawes says. France and Russia and the lot, on charm and dinners and his belly, and it's killing him by inches, and he won't stop. And on Tuesdays he comes to Portman Square and sits in the red chair and says, "Alice, tell me something wicked." Kate is behind the screen once, in 1906. She's 14 and Rolf's forgotten to lock the parlour door, because Rolf's 60 and forgets, and you're in the pantry and hear nothing till after, when she comes down white as flour and stands in the kitchen with her hands hanging. "He saw me," she says. "What did he say?" "He said, 'Alice, there's a mouse behind your screen.' And Mrs. Keppel said, 'That'll be Kate, sir,' seeing to the fire. And he said," she swallows, "he said, 'Ha, off you go, mouse. Don't tell the newspapers.' You put the kettle on. You put sugar in the tea. You sit her at the table. 'Drink that,' you say. 'You're still here.' And that's the day you understand you've become cook. The house on Portman Square is sold in 1909, and everyone moves, family and servants and red chair and all, up the road to a bigger house, a whole corner of Grosvenor Street with a great white front and a garden, and cook says it's Sir Ernest's money, and Dawes says that's enough, and you pack the drawing-room into crates with your own hands, every shepherdess, and the last thing you pack is the silver box from the table by the chair, and there are 2 cigars in it, and you leave them where they are. The new house has 91 stairs. You count. You're 27 and you can count now. And in the spring of 1910, the feet stop. It's the first Tuesday in May, and the parlour door's locked and the coal's up, and 4:30 comes and the bell doesn't ring. 5 o'clock. 6. Mrs. Keppel comes out onto the landing at 5:30 and stands there, and you're on the front stairs with a cloth, and she looks down at you and says nothing and goes back in. Frank has it by Thursday. The King's been at Biarritz, in France, where he goes every spring, and Mrs. Keppel with him, as she always is, in a hotel with a separate floor. And he came back last week with a chest like a bellows, and went to Sandringham and stood about in the rain, and now he's at the palace and can't breathe. How bad? Frank looks at the fork in his hand. Dawes says the Queen's been sent for, from Corfu. You go up the stairs with the coal. You go into the drawing room and you kneel and bank the fire the way you've banked it 11 years, close packed so it'll last. And you stand up and look at the red chair, and it's empty, and it's been empty on a Tuesday before, when he was ill, when he was away, and it's never looked like this. The next day is Friday the 6th. You'll remember the date the way you remember the 24th of May. It's grey and close, and the whole house is quiet. And at 11 in the morning a footman in the palace livery comes to the front door with a letter, and Rolf takes it up, and Mrs. Keppel comes down the front stairs 10 minutes later in her hat and coat with her face like a wall, and goes out to the carriage without a word to anyone. You know where she's going. Everyone does. Frank tells you the rest that night, and Dawes tells Frank, and Mr. Keppel, you suppose, told Dawes, or the Queen's people told somebody who told somebody, because that's how it moves, and by evening the whole of London knows. The letter was the King's. He'd written it years before and lodged it with his secretary, and it said that if he was ever dying she was to be sent for and admitted. And the Queen, Alexandra, who'd come from Corfu in 2 days and gone straight to his bed, read it and let her in. Let her in. That's the thing you'll never get over. The wife let her in. Took her by the hand at the door of the room, they say, and led her to the bed and said, "I'm sure you always had a good influence over him." And the King was in a chair by the window because he couldn't lie down, with his face gone blue, and he knew her, and he tried to say something and couldn't. And then she broke. That's the word they use. Broke. She, who'd stood on a landing with her eyes closed and gone in and poured the tea, who'd sat in the loose box with her chin up, who never once in 12 years said a wrong word or asked for a thing, went down on her knees by the chair and screamed, and couldn't be stopped, and had to be taken out by the Queen's own daughter and a doctor, one arm each, down a palace corridor, still screaming, "What's to become of me? What's to become of me?" She comes back to Grosvenor Street at 4. You're in the hall. You shouldn't be. You should be on the stairs or in the drawing room, but you're in the hall because you heard the carriage, and Rolf opens the door, and she comes in on Mr. Keppel's arm. She can't walk. That's the plain fact of it. She's a tall, strong woman of 41, and George Keppel is holding her up like a sack. Her hat's gone. Her hair's half down. Her face is a thing you've never seen on any face. Red and swollen and open, the mouth open, no sound coming out of it now, and her eyes go over the hall, the stairs, the pictures, Rolf, Frank, you, and don't know any of it. "Nell," Mr. Keppel says. His voice is perfectly steady. "Her room, hot water, Miss Draper, now." You go. You go up the front stairs ahead of them, 2 at a time, and you throw open the door of her room and turn up the gas and pull back the bed and shout down the back stairs for Draper and the cans, and then you stand at the door, because they're coming up slow, 1 step and a stop and 1 step, and you can hear her breathing like a saw. They get her onto the bed. Miss Draper comes running with her sleeves up and starts on the buttons. Mr. Keppel stands at the foot of the bed for a moment with his hands hanging 6'4" of him and looks at his wife, and there's nothing in his face at all. And then he says, "I'll be in the library," and goes out and shuts the door. And it's you and Draper and her. You've never touched her. In 12 years. You've touched her bed and her basin and her gloves and the arm of the chair that was warm with him, and never her. And now you have her feet in your hands, getting her boots off, and her stockings, and her feet are cold as stone, and the laces are knotted and your fingers won't work. And Draper's behind her with the hooks of the gown and says, "Nell, talk to her." What? Talk to her. Anything. She's not here. Bring her back. You don't know what to say. You've never said anything to her in your life but "Yes, madam," and "Good morning, madam." You kneel at the foot of the bed with her cold foot in your 2 hands, and you say the first thing that comes, which is, "Madam, it's Nell. I'm seeing to the fire." Her eyes move. "Madam, the fire's built. It's banked. It'll last till 6 without touching. Kate did the coal. She's steady, Kate. I've the silver on Tuesdays still, madam. Mr. Rolfe never took it off me. I don't think he remembers why he put it on." You're rubbing her foot between your hands. It's like rubbing marble. "The roses came this morning. I put them on the table, the pink ones. You said pink for the drawing room and white for the hall. I've never got it wrong, not once, in 12 years. Her eyes are on you now, not knowing, just on you. He said I was a coal fairy, you say, behind the screen. The first time. You said I was seeing to the fire, and he said I was a coal fairy and not to tell the newspapers. And a man came with a sovereign, and I told him I'd fetch Mr. Rolfe, and he said Keppel's girl. Your voice goes. You keep talking through it. That's all I am, madam. Keppel's girl. And I'm here, and the fire's banked, and it'll last. She makes a sound. It's not a word. And then her face folds, the whole of it, and she turns on the pillow and puts her arm over her eyes and weeps properly, the ordinary way a woman weeps, and Draper lets out a breath and says, "There, that's it, let her." You sit on the floor by the bed with your back against it and your knees up, and you stay there, and the cans come, and you don't move, and Draper doesn't tell you to. He dies at 1:45. Frank comes up the back stairs with it at 1 a.m. and stands on the landing outside her door and looks at you sitting on the floor and doesn't say it. He doesn't have to. Through the floor, from the square, from every square, from the whole of London, one bell and a long gap, and one bell. She's asleep. Draper gave her something. You get up off the floor and your legs have gone, and Frank catches your elbow, and you stand there on the landing at 1 a.m. with the footman holding you up and the bell going through the house like a slow heart. "That's that then," Frank says. "That's that." You go up to the attic. 91 stairs. You count everyone. The house goes into black, and it's a different black from the old Queen's. That was a country's black. This is a house pretending to be a country while the country pretends not to see. The Queen, they say, is being kind. The Queen is telling everyone that Mrs. Keppel has no cause to speak of grief, because the Queen has decided quite reasonably that she is the widow, and there's only one, and the whole of London, which flocked up the front stairs for 12 years, takes the hint. The cards in the hall tray stop. The carriage stands in the mews. The callers on Tuesday mornings don't come. Mrs. Keppel doesn't come out of her room for 9 days, and when she does, she's in black to the ground and thin as a rail, and her face is the face on the landing, closed, with the chin up, and she goes into the drawing room and stands by the red chair with her hand on the back of it and stands there. And then she says to Rolfe quite calmly, "Have this covered, and the box, put the box away." You cover it. You put the dust sheet over the red leather chair that you've dusted every morning for 11 years, and the shape of him goes under the cloth, and you pick up the silver box with its 2 cigars and carry it down to the plate safe, and lock it, and give Rolf the key. She watches the funeral from a balcony in the mall. Not the Abbey. A friend's balcony with a veil, and Mr. Keppel beside her, and 9 kings in the procession behind the coffin. Frank says, 9, on horses, in a row, and the king's little dog, Caesar, walking behind them all on a lead held by a Highlander, and the crowd wept for the dog more than the king's. And in November, they go, Ceylon, then China. 2 years, Dawes says. The children, the house, the lot. Mr. Keppel's arranged it. Somewhere the papers aren't. Somewhere she can be Mrs. George Keppel, a tall, handsome Englishwoman with a very obliging husband and 2 daughters, in a hotel, in the sun, among people who don't know what a Tuesday means. The house is to be shut. Half the servants are let go with characters and a quarter's wages and the king's sovereign, which Mr. Keppel gives them himself, 1 each, wrapped in paper, out of his own pocket. Frank's going to a duke. Kate's going to Curzon Street, to Ivy, who's housekeeper there now with a bunch of keys as big as Draycott's. Cook's retiring to her sister's in Deal. And you're asked to stay, Rolf asks. In the pantry, with the door shut, on a Tuesday afternoon, the way he's asked you everything for 12 years. He's an old man now, bent, and his hands shake when he lays a fork on the baize. The house is to be kept, he says, not shut, kept. Somebody to keep the fires in and the damp out and the moth from the curtains. Mrs. Draycott is going to her daughter. I am too old. He looks at the fork. Mrs. Keppel has asked for you by name. She said, Nell will keep it. She said it was the only thing she was sure of. You stand there. It is 2 years, hardly. Perhaps 3. A house with no one in it, and you, and a girl for the rough. And then they come back, and you are housekeeper of the 2nd most important house in London. He picks up the fork and puts it down, and picks it up. Or you go to Ivy and Curzon Street, and a duke's 2nd footman, who is asking, I believe. Frank has mentioned it. Mr. Rolf. I do not require an answer today. I have never once in 12 years required an answer from you today, and you have never once given me one. He puts the fork down for the last time. You were seeing to the fire. That is what you told the man. That is what she told the king. It is, I have come to think, the only thing anyone in this house ever really did. He goes out. You stand in the pantry with the ammonia in your eyes and the silver on the baize catching the gaslight, a table full of small moons, and you think about a duke's 2nd footman, whose name you know, who has a kind face, and about Curzon Street, and about Ivy with her keys. And you think about a red chair under a dust sheet, and 2 cigars in a locked box, and a woman on a landing with her eyes closed. You take the fork Rolf put down. You breathe on it. You look. You stay. You never quite decide to. That's the truth of it. You just find, on the morning they leave, that you're the one standing in the hall with the keys. They go on the 14th of November, 1910, in the rain, and it's the whole of the pavement full of trunks, and Sonia, 10 now, in a travelling coat too big for her, crying because Nanny's not coming. Nanny's too old, and Violet, 16, white and furious and not crying, and Mr. Keppel handing his wife into the carriage with his hand under her elbow, the way he's handed her into carriages for 19 years. And she stops on the step in her black and turns and looks up at the house. All of it. The white front and the windows and the roof, and then at you, in the doorway. Nell, madam. Keep it warm. Yes, madam. And she gets in and the door shuts, and the carriage goes round the corner into Grosvenor Square, and the rain comes down and you go in and shut the front door, with your own hand, and lock it, and stand in the hall of a house with nobody in it. 2 years, a little more. It's the strangest time of your life, and you'll think later in some ways the best. You and a girl called Mabel for the rough, in a house of 40 rooms, with the furniture under sheets and the carpets rolled and the shutters closed, and your job is to walk through it. Every day, every room, to open a shutter and let the light in for an hour, and look at the walls for damp, and lift the sheets and look at the chairs for moth, and light a fire in a different grate each day so that the chimneys don't sour, and wind the clocks, all of them, so that the house goes on keeping time for people who aren't in it. You do the drawing room on Tuesdays. You go in at 4 with the coal, and you light the fire and bank it, and you take the dust sheet off the red chair, and you sit in the other one across from it with a cup of tea and you look at it. That's all. An empty leather chair with a footstool and a small table at the height of a hand. Sometimes you talk to it. Not much, the weather. Not. What's in the newspaper? Which is a war coming, everyone says. What Mabel broke. You never sit in it. You never once sit in it. You put the sheet back at 6. Nobody would understand that. You don't try to make them. They come back in the summer of 1912, brown and thin and full of elephants, and the house comes off its sheets in a week, and Rolf, who's been living with his sister in Fulham, comes back for one day to hand you the keys of the plate safe in front of everyone and say Mrs. Hartley, which is your name now, at 29, though you've never married, because that's what a housekeeper's called, and you take a house of 40 rooms and 14 servants on your shoulders, and you find they fit because you've been carrying the weight in coal for 13 years, and this is only the same weight in a different shape. The war comes. Frank's Duke's house becomes a hospital, and Frank goes to France as an orderly and doesn't come back. Albus killed at Loos. Walter loses an arm, and you find him a place with a wine merchant who owes Mr. Keppel a favour. Because that's what you do now. You find people places. Mrs. Keppel turns the ground floor into a canteen for officers and pours tea with her chin up for 4 years. And Violet has a scandal so loud the newspapers can't print it. And Sonia grows up. Sonia grows up tall and laughing, with her father's face and her mother's way of looking at a room as if it amused her. And in November of 1920 she marries a young man called Roland Cubitt, whose family built half of Belgravia at St. Margaret's, Westminster, and you do the wedding breakfast for 200, and it goes without a plate broken, and afterward, in the empty drawing room with the flowers dying and the sun going, Sonia comes and finds you. She's in her going-away costume, grey, with a hat. She's 20. She takes both your hands. Nell, you carried the water. You don't know how she knows. Nanny probably years ago. Or her mother. I did miss Sonia. Mrs. Cubitt. She laughs and cries, both at once, the way her mother did on the pillow with the ugliest baby she ever saw. Isn't it absurd? Mrs. Cubitt. She squeezes your hands. Thank you for the water. And she's gone, down the front stairs to the car. That's the last time you see her for a long while. There's a house to run and the years are circles, and she's in Belgravia with her Cubits and her babies too, and the second's a girl in 1921 called Rosalind, and Mrs. Keppel goes to see the baby and comes back and says at dinner to Mr. Keppel, she's got the fist, Sonia's fist, do you remember? And Mr. Keppel says, I remember, and nothing else, and that's all that's ever said. In 1925 they sell the house and go to Italy, Florence. A villa on a hill with a view Mrs. Keppel says is the best in Europe, and a name that means umbrella, and she's 56 and she's done with London, which has forgiven her, mostly, in the way London forgives, by forgetting. She asks you to come. You say no. You're 42. You've a sister's boy in Norwich you've put through school, and a bit put by, and you've never once wanted to live where a Tuesday doesn't mean anything. She stands in the hall of the house you kept on the last morning and looks at you. Keppel's girl, she says. Madam. She kisses your cheek. She's never done that. She smells of the scent she's worn for 25 years, and underneath it, faintly, because it's Tuesday and nobody's ever got it out of the curtains, of Havana. You take a house in Marylebone, a small one, with your bit put by, and let rooms. You're good at it. You're good at keeping things warm. Your lodgers are clerks and a music teacher, and a girl who works at a shop on Oxford Street and reminds you of Kate, and you do their steps yourself every morning on your knees with a block of hearthstone, because your hands know it, and it's the only prayer you've ever really said. Ivy dies in 1931. Her chest. She's 50, and she's housekeeper still in Curzon Street with her keys, and she dies in her own room with her own bed, no feet in it, and you go to the funeral in Bermondsey and stand in the rain and think about a roof on the last night of a century, and the years go round. You're 64 in the summer of 1947. You're in the small house in Marylebone with a war just over, and the whole city still full of holes, and your knees are done, so a girl does the steps now, badly, and you sit in the front room with the paper, because you've become a woman who reads the paper, and in July there's a notice, small, in the column where the births are. Shand. On the 17th, at King's College Hospital, to Rosalind, wife of Major Bruce Shand, a daughter. You read it twice. You put the paper down on your knee. You sit there with the sun on the window and you count on your fingers, which you haven't done in 47 years. Sonia's fist, Rosalind's fist, and now a girl in a hospital in South London with a fist, and in September, in the same paper, in the deaths, Mrs. George Keppel at Florence, aged 78, and a paragraph, kind, discreet, that says what everyone knows and doesn't say it, and Mr. Keppel, it says, is gravely ill, and he goes 2 months after, because he always went where she went. You don't cry. You've never cried for them. You put the paper down and go into the kitchen and put the kettle on, and stand at the window with your hands flat on the sink, and you look at your hands. They're old. The knuckles are big, and the skin is thin, and there's a white line across the right palm where the wire handle of a coal scuttle wore a groove in 1899 that never quite went. And there's a scar on the thumb where the rouge ate through, and they're still, you notice, slightly grey in the creases from a lifetime of blacklead. That baby in the paper, the Shand baby with the fist, will be called Camilla, and she'll be a girl in the country with horses, and a young woman in London, and a wife, and a scandal so loud the newspapers can print nothing else for years, and a wife again, to a prince and a duchess. And on a grey, bright morning in May of 2023, 76 years after the notice in the column, and 123 years after a housemaid carried 9 brass cans up 74 stairs, she'll walk into Westminster Abbey in a gown, and kneel, and have a crown put on her head. Queen. Her great-grandmother's King's Abbey. The loose box is long gone, and nobody living remembers where it was. But the line runs straight. Portman Square, the 2nd floor, the 24th of May. A small red, furious thing in a flannel, and a woman on a pillow saying she's the ugliest thing I ever saw. and a girl with 2 cans standing there with her hands hanging. That's history. Not the kings, the cans. You'll die in that house in Marylebone in the winter of 1961, at 78, in your own bed, and the girl who does the steps will find you, and there'll be a small notice in the paper, and no one will read it who knows what a Tuesday means. But that's a long way off. That's not tonight. Tonight you're 17, and it's November, and the attic is cold. Go back there. Go back to the iron bed under the slates with the skylight full of stars, and Ivy's feet against your shoulder, and the smell of Havana in your hair, and your hands stinging with lard, and the whole of the greatest city in the world settling around you, roof by roof, into the dark. You did the steps, you did the grates, you carried the coal up and up 74 stairs, till your arms went and you carried it with your teeth. You stood behind a screen with cranes on it, and a king said good afternoon, and you're still here. You're warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have a bed and a friend's feet and a fire you built with your own hands burning somewhere below you in a room you'll never sit in. That's more than most of London has tonight. That's enough. The house is letting go. You can feel it, the way you felt it at 10 to 6 when the carriage went. Doors shut, feet gone quiet on the stairs. The gas turned down to a bead at every landing. Mr. Rolfe walking the ground floor one last time with his candle, trying the doors, and then his own door, and then nothing. Somewhere out in the square, the lamplighter's long pole, and a small blue pop. Somewhere down in the kitchen, the range ticking as it cools. Somewhere in the drawing-room, a red chair by a banked fire holding the shape of a man who'll be king going slowly cold in the dark. And you under the roof, Nell Hartley, under housemaid, Keppel's girl, 17 years old and asleep on your feet. Tomorrow there will be steps. Tomorrow there will be grates. Tomorrow there will be coal and cans and Mrs. Draycott's keys and a bell at 4:30 and the laugh coming up through 3 floors. But that's tomorrow. Right now there's just this. The blanket over your ear. The cold on your face. Ivy's breathing gone slow and heavy at the other end of the bed. The far-off bell you're too tired to count. The same as last night. The same as tomorrow night. The same as all the nights stretching out ahead of you, up 74 stairs and down again, for a whole life, until the night you don't have to climb them anymore. Let it come. Let sleep take you the way it took a girl in an attic on Portman Square 127 years ago, with Laird on her hands and a king's laugh in her ears. Let the house fade. Let the city quiet. Let your hands that have carried so much, that have carried everything, lie open on the blanket and finally stop. A century and more will pass. The house on Portman Square will be bombed and rebuilt and turned into offices, and nobody who works in them will know that a Prince of Wales sat in a red chair on the first floor eating lobster sandwiches, or that a girl stood behind a screen, or that the water for a Queen's grandmother was carried up the back stairs in brass cans by a housemaid from Norfolk with split knuckles. The coal holes will be sealed. The area railings will be painted. The bells will ring for other kings and other queens, but people will still climb stairs in the dark to keep other people warm, still kneel on cold steps at dawn, still carry what they're given up and down and never set it down and never say a word. Some things don't change. The weight of a full scuttle doesn't change. The ache in the hands doesn't change. The need, at the end of a long day, to lie down under whatever roof you've got and let the world go on without you for a few hours, that doesn't change either. So let it go. All of it. The steps and the grates and the screen with the cranes and the sovereign on the card and the 9 brass cans. You've done enough. You've carried enough. Put it down now. Close your eyes. Good night.